Welcome to Power Hour, where the editors of Power Sports Business interview the movers and shakers of the industry. This episode is brought to you by Synchrony.
Hi, everybody. It's Brendan from Power Sports Business. Today, we've got a special guest, Christy LaCurelle from MIC. She's the president and CEO of MIC, as well as all the other MIC-related associations like MSF, SVRA, what is it? SVIA?
SVIA, yeah.
SVIA, and the ROVA. ROHVA, is it ROVHA, something like that?
You got it, ROVA. We add all the alphabet.
Exactly. It's a whole alphabet soup with acronyms all thrown in. So welcome, Christy. Can you've been on board now as the head of MIC for a little over 6 months now. How are things going?
Good. A lot thrown out at us in a short period of time that wasn't necessarily foreseen, going back to the start time.
Signed up for it, you didn't know you were going to be stepping into all this stuff, right?
Right. Yeah. So a lot more coming our way in the last few months, but overall, what I've been most impressed with is what a great team, was already there at the association. So I have the best team to work with. Our members have been great. I've had many opportunities to connect with the members over the last 6 months because the timing worked out perfect that we had an aftermarket summit and then we had AIM Expo and we just got back from our fly-in yesterday. So a lot of different opportunities to connect with our members, and they've been great and helpful. And, everybody loves this industry that's here working in it and they want to see it succeed. And that's so clear in the passionate statements that I get from everybody that I meet about, how can we help? Everybody just wants to see power sports stay successful.
Yeah, no, I think that people involved with it, this is what I love about this industry, is that people are so passionate about it. And not only are they, want to work but they're enthusiasts themselves. They've ridden, they've got the experience. You have a background, I'm sure you're from KTM originally, right? And what did you do at KTM? What was your involvement there?
I worked in marketing and motorsports marketing specifically. So a lot to do with racing, which then trickles over into sales departments and R&D efforts and things like that. So it's great to be there because you kind of get to touch base with a bunch of different departments. My first job in power sports was actually at a cycle salvage yard, which is...
I love salvage yards, man. That's some of my favorite. I mean, I could just spend all day at a junkyard pretty much, but but yeah, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, it was fun. The owner of a new parts store at the time, which was kind of like what Cycle Gears are now, is what I worked at, but not a chain, just a standalone shop. He owned the salvage yard too. And so I split my time between the new parts shop and the salvage yard, but he wanted me to do the salvage yard stuff so that I would actually learn a lot about the different parts and bikes and things like that. And it was a big learning experience for sure. I was just a young kid that loved motorcycles, but I didn't know a whole lot about selling parts or what to upsell you with, if you came in. And I learned a lot about what goes together, if you want a piston, what else you need to go with that piston in order to install it. And it was really helpful because later when I started at KTM, I actually sold parts for their amateur racing efforts as my first job there. I was there over 15 years. So started in that program and with the KTM Challenge program and working with all the young riders. And then, as I grew, grew into larger marketing roles.
No, that is really interesting. And I mean, I started out in parts store myself, selling parts when I was in high school for my dad's auto parts store. We sold a lot of Volkswagen I always say we started out in dune buggies, but, we ended up trading dune buggy parts for little go-karts, and that next thing you know, and then I bought motorcycles, and it was off to the races. It's always that race on Sunday, sell on Monday. That's kind of the motto that I grew up with, and I think it really still rings true today in a lot of the racing events. You see a lot of the manufacturers. You got Ducati now just jumping on into motocross, and Triumph jumping into
Yes.
motocross as well, because
Very
it's
exciting.
a pretty high profile, especially Supercross. In this downtime, that's what a lot of people watch, just to get psyched up for the season, for the the selling season.
Yes. And, a lot of people, they get their start on dirt. And so I
Yep.
really like to see that
And
they're
Roberts.
transitioning there. Yeah, exactly. So I think it's going to be great to see more competition there and different bikes. So excited for that announcement later.
Yeah. So tell us about the Capitol, the fly-in that you just did. What was that like? How did you meet with a number? Who did you meet with? And were there a lot of dealers and people? Was it a good turnout from the industry side?
Yes, so for just over 10 years now, MIC has been doing a fly-in every year where we invite our member companies to come out to Washington, D.C. with us, and we organize their meetings with different members of Congress, so on the House side and the Senate side, so we can talk about the important issues that are impacting our industry that particular year. And we schedule everything. So you just tell us what states matter to you, where you have locations at, or where you deal with, where your sales are, where your headquarters are at, and then we schedule all the meetings, and you just have to show up and go talk. We give all the briefing points, everything. So we really make it easy for them to go and have these meetings, and it helps them get more connected to those members of Congress. Oftentimes they schedule tours to come out to that particular dealership or that manufacturer's headquarters or whatever it might be. They even sometimes somebody on their staff might want to try a product. And so we can help organize, a demo ride or a first experience, on one of our products, motorcycle, ATV, side by side, anything like that, to give them the opportunity to really experience what it is. So for this particular year, we had 28 member companies join with us, which was about 40 people that came out from the member companies. We scheduled 95 meetings with members of the House and the Senate, all in one day.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a lot. And that crossed over about
I get upset
27
with
states.
2 or 3 meetings, man. That's 95.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Well, and it's really, it's actually a pretty fun experience because time's limited when you're there. You typically get about 15 minutes. And sometimes, especially on the House side, they have smaller offices. So if you have 5 people in your group, they might say, hey, are you okay if we take this meeting in the hallway? And so there you are in the hallway of the House building, talking about all these important topics, but they're still just as engaged with you in the hallway as they are with an office, because they're there and they really care. And this year we saw a bunch of head nods, a bunch of agreement with our issues. There wasn't anybody that we talked to that was against any of the points that we have that are impacting our industry. And that's a really good place to be in. You know that this can go somewhere and it's all having an impact when you see them and go, oh my gosh, yes, I agree. That's great. Or the senator, really loves this. And yes, we're going to, follow up here. So we had a lot of positive feedback. Of course, number one issue was tariffs.
Right.
That's what we were
been a hot topic here lately for, it's just, nobody knows what's going, so what was the consensus and what was, and I know you were there probably just as it was at the height of it, because now just yesterday they paused it for 90 days. But
yes,
when you were there, it was going crazy. So what was the reaction from the people that were there?
Well, we joked that it couldn't have been more perfect timing. When we scheduled this a few months ago, we didn't know that the tariff announcement would happen the week prior to us being there. But it ended up being perfect timing because we were one of the first groups to come through and be able to talk to them about the most recent announcements. So they were very open to hear about our industry, how it's impacting us. And a lot of times you'll hear people go, well, they must know, they have to know how bad this is. And they do in some segments when those people are talking to them, but until you talk to them, they really don't understand that trickle down effect that happens to every layer of our industry and then ultimately to the end consumer. And that's what we were explaining. And they're so thankful for those stories and the understanding, and especially because a lot of the members we have, they're not at all opposed to having more U.S. manufacturing here, in the United States, but it just takes time to set that up, and they need time. And the way that the tariffs are happening right now is very fast and pretty chaotic and without a lot of explanation. And so what we're asking for is, can there be a slowdown, a pause? And luckily there is right now, so that everyone can properly prepare for how this might impact, because it's right now the way it's going is very detrimental to our industry. And we have to stand up and fight for this. And the best way are really these grassroots efforts and showing up. And so having that pause come after a day of being there, I mean, we were all texting each other yesterday. It was because we were there,
I'm pretty sure
yeah.
that the motorcycle industry put the pressure on and made them,
Right.
Pause it. So
yes, but there was many groups there doing the same thing, and those are the efforts that really pay off. And so the one thing we can say to anybody listening about this and how it impacts them is go talk to the local person in your district, your Congress, man or woman, about what this is. And then also call the Washington, D.C. office, send them an email, do anything you can to say, this is my story and this is how it impacts me. And this is where you're based and who you employ or whatever it is, because they want to hear from the people in their states and specifically in their districts so that they truly understand what's going to happen, the impact that'll have there in that environment.
Yeah, I think that has a big, it's always, you've got to think local in a lot of this stuff, but it's important to, I think what's good about that flying is you can cover so much ground. You've got members that have locations in various states, and they can just go to different senators or Congress people and state, why it's important to protect this industry, to look out for it, and the amount of people that we employ,
Right. And so we do really believe it was a positive impact. We had great response, and already their staff members. So the best case, you get to meet with that actual congressperson, but oftentimes you'll end up meeting their head of staff. But those people follow up with you right away and they ask for more detail. And so they're really quick. So we be really quick, right back with them to give them the information they need. And we had about a third of our attendees this year that were brand new, had never been to a fly-in before, and they were just blown away afterwards. They're like, this was so great. They were able to schedule tours with people that come back and visit their facilities afterwards. So it was a whole new introduction to them on how to actually speak up on behalf of their company and the industry and actually see the impact it can have.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's an important thing for anybody to do. I mean, at least we got to do it once or twice, but I mean, there's so many issues, and it just so happens like this year was a very important, for all these different reasons, but there's more things going on than just tariffs. We're also looking at promoting the industry, getting more people to ride, protecting land access and things.
Yes.
So were you able to touch on any of those things?
Yes. So we actually just sent out a press release today about RTP, which is the Recreational Trails Program. And this is probably the single best program that has ever come for the OHV community. So in 91, what happened is there is this gas tax that you pay. It's roughly today about 18 cents on every gallon of gas goes into this federal highway fund. And it really goes back to the paved roads and things like that we drive our cars on. But in 91, there was a group of people that said, well, hey, everybody that's filling up their off-road motorcycles, ATVs, side-by-sides, they're putting in tax too. Couldn't that go to trail maintenance? And so they agreed that it should. And so since then, there's been a portion of money that goes every year into this RTP fund, and it's split 30% for motorized trail, 30% for non-motorized trail, and then 40% for mixed use. And the greatest thing about this program is it brought a lot of groups together that have recreational interest and brought them to connect together and agree together so that they can use the money to properly maintain all the trails. So you got hikers, working with bikers and working with us on the motorized side, and even the marine companies are, in on this too, because you're going there with your boats and everything.
Access as well, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so you joke it's like the Sierra Club and the Gun Club are, talking about the
it seems like a weird mix of, but
right?
when it comes to outdoors, though, we're all in it
because
together.
We all want to save this land and, be good stewards of the land and the environment that we're getting access to with our products. So it's been a great program, but currently it's funded at $84 million a year. And there was a study done in the last couple years that showed that we actually pay in $81 million into the fund from the off-road products that we're using and filling up with gas.
Yeah.
And so the press release this morning is we just had a group of senators, about 7 of them currently co-sponsor a bill that is asking to increase the amount of money up to what we're actually putting in for the RTP fund for the next time that this comes up for reauthorization. So it could hopefully go from 84 to the 281. That's our best case scenario. Yes. But that was one of the asks that we were having when we were talking to them on Tuesday was, do you agree with this? Will you sign off on this? And there wasn't anybody that said no. Everybody was like, yes, that sounds great. If that's what you're paying in, that's what you should be getting back, and more money that's going to help all of these trails. Again, the motorized side and the non-motorized side, it's great because it's all going back there to make sure we can continue to recreate, which right now is so important for mental health with everything going on, to get out there and get that freedom.
That's very true. I mean, the outdoors has, I have an RV that, we go out, we camp every, it's parked at a campground every summer, but it's like, I can't wait till that season hits so we can just sit out there and just kind of relax, and get your head straight, and obviously, to have some toys, some power sports toys to run around on too, just makes it so much nicer. But the power sports and the industry getting trail access is so important because we've got so many of these manufacturers making great products, and if they don't have anywhere to ride them, it's kind of like you're killing a whole industry at that point. And
there was a representative from Michigan that recently told us that there isn't one bridge on any OHV trail anywhere in the state that wasn't built with money from this RTP fund. And just for clarity on how you use it, so they give grants, mainly to nonprofit companies to go do this maintenance or build these bridges and maintain these trails and these other places. So we also will help people apply for those grants, and there's other companies that we work with, like Novak's a great one, that will help push people toward these grants and let them know where to go so that they can get this money to help properly maintain these trails and keep them going for years to come.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, I know Yamaha does a lot with their outdoor access initiative, but you need, the more money we can get to help with all these trails, especially with all the cuts that we've, and I think we were talking about this earlier, the whole Doge cut thing is put a real damper on people's, maybe it's kind of dampered the spirit of people going outdoors or making reservations, and they don't know what's out there. So, as far as we know, things are still operational, and bathrooms are open, campgrounds are open, right?
Yes. And that's what we want to tell people, so yes, initially when they first made those cuts, unfortunately, there was a lot of those frontline workers that were laid off. So these are the people that open the gates, that clean the restrooms, that do some of this trail maintenance. They were let go. And that was pretty terrible for a number of weeks, where you were just seeing all of the stories about the places that were shut down. And at that point, a lot of people canceled their trips, and now all of these campgrounds have their reservations have dropped a ton, not to mention that a lot of people come in internationally as well, and now they're really scared to fly over, for multiple reasons right now, but to also just not have it be open when they come. This is what they've seen. So since those initial layoffs, they have corrected a lot, and there is a lot of facilities back open, and they've put those people back in place. So we're really happy for that. And we encourage people to please go out and use these parks and go recreate.
Right.
And if for some reason you find out that there is still some closures, report those immediately and let people know about the impact so that we can continue to get them back open and fight for those lands.
Would they tell, would that, like, their congressman, or can they tell, like, MIC, like the government office, the government relations offices? I mean, is there like a contact?
Yeah. Any of the above. They can certainly reach out to us and we can pass that message, to the offices in Washington, D.C., but they can reach out to the local offices in their district for their congressperson and let them know that it's happening. And then they can go and help say, hey, we need this open because this is an important trail to our area and for our community. But the statement that we were trying to make in our fly-in is, we've been told there's going to be more layoffs. So even though a lot of these people have been put back to work, we're being told that at some point they will potentially have another round of cuts. And so what we're saying is, please just, think before cutting and look at who's really being cut, because if you're taking those people away that are on the front lines, then that will be a closure. And we don't want those kind of forever closures. We need to keep this land open and make sure that, everybody can access it for many years.
And the fees that a lot of people pay to use the park system, from what I understand, more than covers a lot of what the payroll is, So if they're cutting maybe 5 million a year and they're making 55 million off of it, something like that, then it doesn't make sense to keep cutting. You need to have the right enough staff there to be able to maintain that kind of level of revenue that they're bringing in, because then that can maintain those parks. And then we're also, the industry and the gas tax giving to help maintain those trails. I mean, it can't be all volunteer work. I don't think you need to have, some real park rangers and people that do that for a living. And I've got a cousin that's a park ranger out west, so it's near and dear to me, but I think that the we'll get through this at this point. It's a little frustrating because we don't know what's going on and what's going to be cut, and it's confusing to a lot of people.
Right. We're part of around 40 member companies that are kind of in recreational fields that are part of an organization called the Outdoor Roundtable. Yeah. And we actually had our government relations team meet with the head of the U.S. Forest Service this morning to talk about, how can we help them? How can we work together and make sure that we're doing our part to keep these lands open? And they were very open to the conversation and very much want to come up with a plan of what we can do to kind of put our best foot forward with them and, and fight for everything to stay open. So that was a really positive meeting. And every day there's meetings like this that we're doing to, fight for our industry. And the biggest thing we can do is just encourage people, like, reach out to us, or please go let people know the impact it has on you as well.
I mean, the outdoor recreation industry, from what I understand, and I know from the roundtable, some of their data, it's about $1 trillion industry, right? I mean, when you combine
$1.2 trillion,
camping, power sports, motorcycles, everything, hiking, it's a humongous industry, and it's a big part of, as you say, it's our mental health out. It's a way to kind of de-stress for most people.
Right. And it's huge. The latest stat is 3.3% of people that are employed in the US are employed in a recreational field.
Wow.
So,
So it's not something you can just take. I mean, I hope that, whoever making the decisions, that they're not taking it, just a red pen to whatever, just because they see the number on the, as a number and not as an actual, like, this is what it means,
Yes.
But that, I mean, again, that's what going to that, the fly-in, what the importance of that is, because you get a chance to tell the story, of
exactly.
Industry.
Yes. So. And your story matters.
Yeah.
We're anybody listening, your story matters.
The story does matter. Absolutely. But, so, and with the all the other stuff you're doing with, like, the trails program, the fighting against the tariffs, and I think the tariffs is going to be an ongoing thing for a little while. I mean, I don't know, unless I feel like it's going to definitely go into Q2. If we got a 90-day pause, it's going to come up again, and then but I do think that what we've seen is that they come out, and then there's a reaction, and then there's a a pause and then there's a deal. So maybe, if it just continues like this, I think we can get to the other side of it. But as we were saying earlier, at the previous time, Trump was in and they redid the USMCA agreement, which was NAFTA. They redid that, which was everybody agreed on, and a lot of these companies built factories in Mexico. It's not easy to just pick up and go, well, now that we're going to get, we got to go build here. We got to build, these are billion-dollar, multi-million dollar investments that have to be made. So,
Yeah, that's been hard, that some of that's changing. Additionally, the way that he's doing the tariffs this time, you can't go and fight for exclusions in this type. You can go and tell your story, but you can't fight for exclusions. So that's another big difference. We actually are, hopefully it'll be at the end of the next week, doing a symposium on tariffs. If not, it will be very early the following week, but we're making sure that we can get the right speakers lined up for it so that we have as much information as possible to provide to everybody in our industry about the tariffs, how they sit currently, what the 90-day pause means, what else that we can do as an industry right now to ensure that we're speaking as much as we can in these 90 days to hopefully have even more of an impact than what Tuesday did for us. Let's keep marching forward in this time and not just wait to see what happens in 90 days, but make the most of the time. And so we're going to do a symposium that it'll actually be free to anybody. You don't have to be an MIC member. We're going to send the link to everybody because this is important enough. We want to make sure everybody in the industry is seeing it and hearing it and listening, and then can reach out, with questions that they have, and however we can be helpful, we want to, because it, like you said, this is a pretty serious situation and it's the right time for everybody to come together to work on this.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And we'll definitely promote that. I think we need to come together as an industry and have a unified voice again, again, to promote our causes and to, at least stand up for ourselves. and a lot of the auto industry has gotten a lot of attention. And I've always looked at stuff, well, if they're getting it, does that include power sports? But and the auto industry is humongous, a lot. It's a different animal than what we are. But they have some of the same challenges because they've got plants, and they're going to have, so a lot of what affects them would affect us. But I, want to make sure, we need to make sure that our voice gets heard as much as theirs, and that we've got dealers and small businesses and people importing stuff, because again, a motorcycle dealership can have stuff from China, Japan, the US or Mexico,
everywhere.
From everywhere. I learned this a long time ago, was like, hey, of course we promote and want US products, and things made in America. And I think that's still important, but it's not always practical that we're going to, people have their own preferences. We don't want the government or somebody telling us what our choices have to be because of that, at least on a consumer side. And I think, even on a business side, you want to know where the lines are and what the playing field is,
Right. Right. Yeah. Most of our aftermarket companies and of course our OEs that we have are global businesses. And so they have, distribution facilities everywhere. They have manufacturing everywhere. To have an effective global business. And so this is going to hurt quite a bit if we can't get this pause to stay.
Well, I think one thing with the pause anyway, and it'll be good for Harley, because I know the EU was targeting Harley with some substantial tariffs on their end, which wouldn't have been good for Harley, which is already in struggles with things. So I think in the 90 days will give us a chance to get into the season and get selling and hopefully get on our feet. So, and then again, we'll see, the China thing is worrying because they haven't paused that. And there are a lot of products, let's face it, a lot of stuff that in this industry comes from China. And so we're going to have to figure that out. Hopefully people have gotten a good shipment ahead of time and can get through the next 90 days in that, but we'll see.
Agreed.
But yeah, hey, thank you so much for coming on here, Christy. It was great to meet you and to talk to you in person. Well, kind of in person, at least,
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
Yeah.
we'll stay in touch here, and we definitely want to promote the webinar you guys are going to have on tariffs. So keep us in the loop on all that.
Yes. Appreciated. May I take one more minute to talk about one other hot topic? Okay, so we recently partnered with People for Bikes, which is the industry association for bicycles, and this is through the Motorcycle Safety Foundation. We created an e-bike course, and this is really aimed at teenagers, younger kids that are riding their e-bikes to school now or to their after-school jobs, or even on the weekends, just playing. You've seen this huge uptick in e-bikes, and they're fun, so no wonder,
They are fun,
Yeah, but of course, some of these kids, because they're not even of driving age, they don't really know the rules of the road, and now they're playing really close to the road. And so the course is really designed to explain to them, where you should be, what type of bikes are even allowed on sidewalks, on main streets, on trails. It's really sticking to those like class 1 through 3 e-bikes that are allowed in most states, but explaining to them proper use of the road, safety tips, wear a helmet, all this kind of stuff. A lot of schools are starting to require some sort of course in order to park your bike on campus, even because they just want to make sure kids have some sort of education. And because MSF has been a leader in motorcycle rider education for over 50 years, we knew how to deliver the content. And then we got People for Bikes in as the experts in the bicycling side to really make a nice course. And so it's live now. ebikecourse.com is the website. So people could go there if they have a young kid that they want to take the course. My daughter took it when we were testing. I had her go through it. She's 13. And when we were out in DC, her and I rented e-bikes, and we went to Mount Vernon on e-bikes. And she's like, "Hey, Mom, this is a class 2 e-bike, right?" And I was like, "Look at you knowing your classes of e-bikes now," which she wouldn't have known, a few weeks prior without taking it. So it was nice to just see that change in her in taking the course. So we're going to work closely with a lot of law enforcement, school districts, even some HOAs have been asking for this. But, these are the riders that for the first time are trying something with a motor on 2 wheels. And it's been decades since we've had this many people be open to trying something 2-wheeled and these type of numbers.
On them, so
exactly. And so we want to make sure these riders are as safe as anybody else out there. And, hopefully they are riders that someday decide that they want to come over to the true motorcycle side as well. So we're really excited about the opportunity there to help educate these young riders and hopefully improve safety there. It's been a big topic, coming up all the time about what these kids are doing and how we can help keep that alive. Because the last thing you want is it to be regulated so hard that these kids don't get to ride anymore and enjoy these products, and you lose a whole audience that finally went outside and stopped playing video games. Let's just make sure they know what they're doing and keep them on 2 wheels.
It's back in my day we had mopeds, but you had to have a license to ride a moped. You had to so this is like they're like mopeds, but previously there was really no and I don't know that you need to license them or require, but I think having a course is very important. And again, I think that the basic rider courses that are tremendous. So if they kind of, the MSF knows how to teach people to ride, whether it's an electric motor or a gas motor or whatever. And I have all the faith that is going to be a successful program. And I think it's good because, a dealer can, there's a lot more dealers selling e-bikes now, motorcycle dealers that carry e-bikes. And it's nice to be able to say, look, hey, your kid's interested, put them in a e-bike course, get them, let them see what that's like before making this investment or whatever, to see if they can handle it. Or you buy the bike and include the e-bike course with it,
it's a great starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, great. This has been great talking to you. And we'll stay in touch on these topics for sure.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
If you like this podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. We also invite you to connect with us on powersportsbusiness.com.